Rinpoche tempe trinle yarngoda Belge drolor zambe ze parche Pande alame shabla solwade Oma Guru Vajradara Suma Timunisha Sane Karm Utta Vardani Shri Bhadra Varsa Manya Sarva Siddhi Hum Hum Om A Guru Vajradara Suma Timunisha Sane Karm Utta Vardani Shri Bhadra Varsa Manya Sarva Siddhi Hum Hum Om A Guru Vajradara Suma Timunish Uta Vardanya Shri Bhadra Varsa Manya Sarva Siddhi Hum Hum Om A Guru Vajradara Suma Timunisha Sanekar Uta Vardanya Shri Bhadra Varsa Manya Sarva Siddhi Hum Hum Om Guru Vajradara Suma Timunisha Sanekar Utta Vardanya Shri Bhadra Varsa Manya Sarva Siddhi Hum Hum Om Guru Vajradara Suma Timunisha Sanekar Utta Vardanya Shri Bhadra Varsa Manya Sarva Siddhi Hum Hum Om A Guru Vajradara Suma Timunish Uta Vardanya Shri Bhadra Varsa Manya Sarva Siddhi Hum Dhagi Jetsun Lama Tuje Che Nyamda Dala Tuje Siksu So Gebe Shesan Dala Tendo So Oyon Sunge Nawa Tsedo So Tseji Ningne Solwa Debe Tse Dechen Korlo Visu Lekshu Ne Yela Sambe Dede Malupa Geme Lungi Drupra Chingi Lo Tsoni Sodan Dikdun Shakpe Tse Dinge namke yinsu lekshu ne labchen tsoni yonsu tsopa Chera nyetun chamra chingi lo chanchu pargi nyinsen tukun tu Nyu peme siudru lekshu ne chanchu drube geken kunshi shi Tungen dela drubra ching Dagi lo na chela chokpa dang Chemin samjor ngemba shiwa dang Chedan tumbe dede malupa beme lungi drupra chingil Dorna tingne tsirava tamche dan techi pardo nekav tamche tu Rese kyamne lama kele me tukche chingi dala sikso sol Gongyab drewe nyamda dachala jetsun lame tuche rab kongne Kodan sungi nawa dralme tu nyamsu nyongwe kesan tobrash Kewa kuntu yanda lama dan rame cheki pela longche chi Sadan lamge yunten rabzone dorje changi kopan nyur tobu shoya pakyu ke kudan dagi lu pakyu ke sundan dagi nga pakyu ke tukdan dagi yi ten yerme chiktu Chingi lo ma kyuke kudan dagi lu sundan dagi nga ma kyuke tukdan dagi yi ten yerme chiktu chingi lo Om Muni Muni Mahamuni Shakya Muni Svoha Om Muni shipu ki chu shime to Tamare rabaling shi ni de gempadi sangye shintu mikte ulwarki drokununam dashi Parasho yidam guru ratna mindrala kam niryatayami Sangye chedan tsoge chanam la chancho pardo dani kyapsuchi Dagi chushe gibe sonam ki Drola pinchra sangye drupar Sho sangye chedan tsoge chanam la chancho pardo dani kyapsuchi Dagi chushe gibe sonam ki Drola pinchra sangye drupar Sho sangye chedan tsoge chanam la chancho pardo dani kyapsuchi Dagi jinso gibe sonam ki Drola pinchra sangye drupar
In the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha, I take refuge until enlightenment. With the practice of generosity and the other perfections, may I obtain Buddhahood for the benefit of all sentient beings.
Nella nostra vita
In our lives, there are many things that are important, but among those, one of the most important things are human relationships. We can learn so much. We can do different things. We can obtain many beautiful things. But one of the most important aspects that shape and give direction to our lives are the human context, the human relationships that we create, that we build. And on the other side, together with this, there's a path, there's an inner path that we follow in our lives. And this transcends meetings, the people that we meet, and the things we do with others. Often, when we don't have a clear path, or we don't have ideals or values, we don't have a clear inner direction, then we're quite lost. And instead, if that's present, um, we can't get lost because we have clear values, clear ideals. No matter where we go, we can't get lost. Instead, when we're looking for our meaning, and when we're looking for meaning outside at a certain point, that context changes, that person's not there, we lose our reference points. And the taking of refuge has to do with both of these aspects, both with relationships, human relationships, and also with our life's direction. Strongly linked to both of these. I remember when Lumpo Tata came here to Albagnano, this Theravada master from Thailand. I don't know how many of you were there. At least there were three. Three were there. I hope that Lumpo Tata can come back. I've asked him many times, and every time I see him, he's one of my masters too. He's from the Theravada tradition. He was very close friends with Lama Ganchen Rinpoche, and he's responsible for a monastery in Bangkok. It's enormous. When I was there last time, this is the second to last time when I spoke to them, the there were more than 4 million uh, practitioners enrolled, let's say. I've participated in ceremonies, teachings, and more than 50,000 people. And he's one of the main teachers within this organization. Um, I feel really busy, but I can imagine how busy he is with an enormous quantity of responsibilities. Also, in a very delicate situation, because the Tibetan, sorry, the Thai government has just given them the charter to teach in all of the schools. Um, and he's been asked to teach the teachers in the various cities in Thailand. So they would meet the teachers, and so he would be in Bangkok with with a couple thousand teachers, and the other teachers would be in other places in Thailand. So, and regardless of all these responsibilities that he has, he came here to Albagnano, and it's the first time that he ever taught outside of his monastery. He came here and he taught us a sutra. I remember going by his room before he came down. He used to teach with slides, and so on his bed he had all of these slides all open, and he was preparing for these teachings. And I felt just how much love. I mean, these things he knows perfectly, but he's still looking at the best way to transmit it all to us. And this teaching that he gave us talked about that in our lives there are different types of relationships. We have relationship with our parents, we have a relationship with our children, relationship with our friends, relationships with our co-workers, relationships like our employers and our employees, relationships with our teachers, with our spiritual guides. And in each type of relationship in this sutra, Buddha, it talked about what are the duties and what are the also what your rights are. And I remember just how much importance these relationships with these human relationships are. And one aspect was finding someone, looking or finding someone um, that we that is a reference for us, that we trust, and not just as a teacher, but where there's this connection of heart to heart, where you feel that there is a worthy exchange. And in the sutra, there's a difference between a relationship with our, I mean, the difference between the relationship between a teacher who transmits knowledge. I mean, what kind of relationship is that? Where I respect you, I follow what you teach me, and you transmit knowledge to me. This how to you teach me on how to read, how to do a certain job, how to meditate, or philosophy. It's very important, but it's interesting to see that that's just not enough. Since the time of Buddha and probably before, this in India, this was given great importance even before. In addition to the relationship with someone who teaches us, which doesn't take away the importance of the relationships with our friends and with our family and coworkers. Every relationship has its worth, but there's also a relationship with the guru, with the spiritual guide, a relationship where towards one or more than one who represent for us a path of love and trust, who represent also what we want to become when we walk together. In other words, the function of a teacher is to teach, and the function of a spiritual guide is to bless. What does that mean, to bless? It means interact in such a way, can be through words, through a physical presence, through an image, through a thought, where this interaction really touches us, moves something inside of us. And we see that that interaction brings us a positive transformation. I've had different experiences from different teachers and different spiritual masters. And it was very clear the difference between a teacher who taught me many things, or those with whom I had this connection heart to heart, where I could felt really, really deeply connected. And so, and for example, I've had some masters who taught me very little but touched me deeply. So, and there's all faith as well. Maybe, or they transmit to me not with words, but as the example of their life, which transmitted to me strength and faith. So we need these examples. We need these people with whom we can connect, those close to us and those far away from us, that help us connect to this path. Connect to this path that we want to follow. In other words, we're not made to walk this path alone. There are those who do it. Rangyal in Tibetan, and Buddha described, he described three types of spiritual practitioners: Nyentu, Rangyal, and Chanchu Sempa. We have the first two who look for spiritual growth, thinking about their own needs, and the third is a bodhisattva who follows the spiritual path, thinking of common needs. And each one is divided into three types. Those who those who need to be guided, and then there are those who follow their own path in total autonomy. Serutabo Rangel, those who are are like a rhinoceros. It's said that the rhinoceros live they don't live in a group, but they're solitary beings. So from one life to life, one follows his own path without trusting and entrusting himself or herself to a spiritual guide. It's rare, but it's possible. Most of us, we transform based on transformation. And it's important to be able to trust someone with whom we develop faith and love. When we talk about someone who is a spiritual guide for us, I don't entrust myself in the sense where I say, I take refuge and you do with me what you will. No. Taking refuge is I take refuge in you. Help me walk, and we can walk together. I'm still responsible for my actions, my decisions, but there's someone who helps me, shows me the path and helps me see what I couldn't see, or helps me see what I already knew but had forgotten, who touches certain parts of my being that alone I am not able to access. In the Tibetan tradition, this kind of relationship is given a tremendous amount of importance. When one asks how many spiritual guides one can have, there's no fixed number. If we think about the masters in our tradition, like Lama Tsongkhapa, he had more than 100 masters from many different traditions, actually. And so we can't say, oh no, you have this master, or you can't follow this one. I don't see it like this, personally speaking. We have a path that's a development of love towards ourselves, towards others, developing a correct view of reality and facing our mental defilements and developing our inner qualities. This path is the way of the Dharma. And along this path, if we were to think of it as an analogy of a trip, we need them all. Like, for example, maybe we need to learn many different things. So maybe and each teacher, each master would have a different function. The one who shows you how to breathe correctly, the other one how to meditate correctly, how philosophy aspects. It's said that the beginning of our path, the fewer teachers we have, the better off it is, because we have this tendency of trusting the person, and each person can have a different approach, and we might see these differences as conflictual. And the further along we go in our path, and the more we're able to take refuge in the Dharma, then at that point, the more spiritual guides we have, the better it is. If our spiritual guide, our guru, can manifest in many different ways. There are those maybe we address with great formality, or there are others who don't have a formal place in as a spiritual guide, but that contact, even if it's a brief contact, helps us, transforms us deeply. I've had many masters in this life. I still have them. Also because our masters, when they leave their body, we don't say, I still have. Lama Ganchen Rinpoche keeps guiding me. And I'm not talking about mystic experiences. I'm talking about putting into practice what he taught me, what he transmitted. And I've had something happened that really touched me, and let me just say that first, that when we open ourselves to the path and we open ourselves to receive from others, we can receive where we least expect it, in places where we least expect it. There's this event, I've discussed it, I've talked about it many times, but it really touched me and I like to share. I was on the beach, this was many years ago already. I I was somewhere where there were beautiful beaches. I wanted to go to a special beach. It was quite far. I had to go by car. It was about an hour, and then another 40 minutes walking bef before I got to that beach, which actually wasn't very special. But before there was a man with a coconut stand, and I love coconut. So I went to this man. He was maybe 50 plus years. My perception was that he seemed to have 50 plus years, and I asked him, how much does it cost? And I had asked before at the other more crowded beach, and they gave me a price that was just out of any. It was exorbitant price. Instead, he gave me a very decent and fair price, and he didn't say anything special. It was a very simple relationship. I asked how much it cost. He told me. I asked for one. He prepared it, and I thanked him. I mean, there wasn't more. But I remember being in front of this man and being kind of frozen because he transmitted something that touched me deeply. He transmitted this union of humbleness with dignity, and I had rarely ever seen something similar. With his presence and his way of being, his speech, he was able to transmit both humbleness and dignity. And I remember when I took the coconut, I didn't want to go away. And at that point, I asked him his name, and he said, Michel. And it's not normal to run into someone with the same name. And I was there a minute, and I was deeply, deeply touched. Every once in a while, I mean, I think if we were to take antique text and if we wrote this story, we could call it an emanation of the Buddha that showed himself as an ordinary person but transmitted like this. So I was there, and for no particular reason, but that meeting changed me and touched me deeply, somewhere deep inside. And this is one of those beautiful things of such meetings. And along our life, we have these kinds of meetings. Some formally, some less formally, some with more presence, some with less. What's important is that when we know, when we meet a path, a spiritual path, and the one who guides us within that method, that path, one of the greatest enemies that exists would be the uncertainty. Because if I go to take a medicine, I need to be sure about it. If I go to the doctor and the doctor gives me a treatment and I do some of it, I'm not so sure of other parts of the treatment, then it's just not going to work. So it says that before you start a healing treatment, I need to have full faith in the doctor. Go there. I can go there and I can have experience. I can listen to different doctors. I can see who has been cured by this doctor. And when we're really, really sure, then we trust that healing treatment completely without losing our ability of judgment, without losing our judgment. But we need to trust fully. And this doesn't mean in any way losing our autonomy. But it's important to trust what we're doing. And our spiritual path is really similar. When we follow a path, we need first of all to get close to know the he or she who is guiding us, teaching us, and the teachings themselves before trusting. And before really, really trusting, we need to try it for ourselves. Buddha Shakyamuni is attributed to have said, "Don't believe what I said just because I was the one to say it." Like buying gold. First, you need to cut it, scratch it, and burn it to see if it's real. You need to do the same thing with my teachings. Where you see that they're true, then you need to put them into practice. And this is important. When we get close to our life's practice, we need to try it, try to understand it better, deepen our understanding. And once we are sure that this path has meaning for me, and I see that I want to dedicate my life to this path, at that point, we take refuge. So we can say that the taking of refuge is when, after having researched, analyzed, and getting close, knowing better, it's the moment where we say, yes, I want to follow this path. Like saying, after we've gotten to know each other and gone out together, lived together, and now we decide to get married. And that takes time before you get to that point. You need to take a couple trips together. We have to live together a little bit just to have that certainty. A little bit in that meaning. Originally in India, it was said that before you trust someone as a spiritual guide, you should have experience with that person for at least 12 years. And that 12-year period is the time needed to have different experiences together. I see that in our context, it still needs time, a year, 2 years, 3 years. One needs to take time, but 12 years is perhaps not necessary anymore. But we do need this time to really trust a path. It doesn't mean develop blind faith. No, it means to know, to experience, to test, and then really entrust myself then to what I have seen that works for me. As I've said certain different times, there are 3 different approaches. The first one is a spiritual tourist. I mean, all 3 are valid, and to be the third, you need to go through all 3 types. So that first level is a spiritual tourist, like a tourist who goes to a city. And what does a tourist do? Goes to beautiful places, sees nice things, it takes 4 pictures, eats something good, goes to the museum, and then goes home. He doesn't live the city, doesn't really have the experience of what it is fully. He doesn't allow himself to experience it. And then they don't live there. I mean, you can't be from there until you are there as a tourist. And it's nice to be a spiritual tourist. There's no problem. It's nice. It's the first approach. He comes, she comes, listens. I like this, like that. Okay. But he doesn't put himself in the game more than necessary. The second one is the amateur who goes to that city, and in addition to going there, going, in addition to just spending the vacation time there, but he rents a house and lives the reality of the place a little bit better. In the spiritual level is when one starts getting closer, looking at himself more and more, desires to deepen his understanding and the methods. But there's still a division. There's still a division between my life and my spiritual life. There's a certain division. Sometimes I go to the temple, I go to meditate, I study something, I do a retreat, I like meditation, etc., this and that. But something it's part of my life, but it doesn't encapsulate every aspect of my life. The third level that we could call like the resident, the professional, is where one doesn't go there and is just there sometimes. No, one lives that place from January to January all year. It's there in the summertime, in the wintertime, and knows all aspects of that place. It's where one integrates that spiritual path in every aspect of his life. And there's not that moment where one is practicing the Dharma, and then there's other times to have fun. No, the practice of Dharma can be found in every aspect of one's life. Meditation, like going out to eat or going out for fun. But so when I'm having fun, shouldn't be in contradiction to my spiritual path. It's part of my spiritual path. So when we get to the point where we say, I want to be at that third level, I want to really put myself in the game, I want to grow in this path of loving myself, loving others, I trust this tradition, which doesn't mean that there are there's only this tradition, but this is the one I found and this is the one I trust. And this doesn't mean that we can't have references in the different traditions. Here, in Buddhism, we're taking refuge in Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha. This is the basis. But if one follows other traditions within Buddhism, Nyingmapa, the other ones, or the Gulupa like ours, I personally don't see any problem. But when someone asks me, can I take refuge with more masters in also with different traditions? I mean, Lama Ganchen Rinpoche always transmitted, and I believe it myself too, I don't have any problem. What I can offer, I offer, and what you're able to receive, you receive. You can't say, oh no, you can't follow this tradition, or you can't go to this spiritual master. This doesn't exist at all. But at the same time, it's important to remember that when we mix too many different dishes, we can have a stomach ache. So they can be beautiful traditions, but when mixed, you get a stomach ache. What does that mean? It means sometimes valid traditions, but they have different approaches. And each approach has a beginning, a middle, and an end. There's a coherence. And if we put them together, we're not always able to fit all of these different methods. As the great Master Atisha said, it's important to, he said, respect all spiritual traditions and follow the one you prefer with determination. This means mostly when we're talking about the most fundamental aspects. For example, in the Buddhist tradition, that can really be different they can be quite different from other spiritual practices. So when you choose one, it's really important to follow the fundamental elements of that tradition. So for example, maybe I follow Vajrayana Buddhism, but then I can also I can learn a lot from the Theravada tradition, or if I'm following the Gelupa tradition, but maybe in the Kargyu tradition, I can learn, for example, the Poa practice. Lama Rinpoche brought me also to other masters. Was in that was we can have different masters, but it's important that our path is stable. I spoke also before about the Theravada master Lumpo Tata. So when we are ready to with ourselves, where we say, I want to follow this path, I see coherence in that, and I want deeply to practice the Dharma. I want to grow spiritually. I want to transform myself and get out of this so-called cycle of samsara. And I find here a coherent path. And as I've said before, it doesn't mean that there aren't other valid traditions. But like once I was in Kathmandu many, many years ago, maybe at the beginning of maybe 98, 99, I was in Kathmandu and two people came to me and said, Lama, look, tomorrow we're going to this master who has a lineage that is very secret, and it's being lost, and he has this commitment. He can only give this transmission 3 times in his life. This will be the 3rd time. Very special. Should we go? I said, no, I don't want to go. And they said, what do you have against him? I said, nothing at all. But what I see is that it's difficult for me just to digest, to eat the food that's in front of me. Why should I go somewhere else, as a spiritual tourist? And it seems nice. It seems like I'm adding one more, baseball card to my collection. And that doesn't mean that there isn't respect. There is respect. I don't go to receive something if I don't have a sincere desire to then put it into practice. I have deep respect for every tradition. Within my tradition, I've found a coherence that's always worked for me. As Lama Ganshin Rinpoche reminded me more than once, he said, our function, he meant like as a Lama, he talked about himself, about me, our function is to be at the service of others. And what I can offer is what I receive from this spiritual tradition. So this, I'm walking in this direction. Anyone who wants to come with me is welcome. I'm not here to impose anything on anyone, but this closeness, this love, this sincerity is what I have to give. I remember once I was in India with my father, and we needed to go and find his Tibetan teachers who were outside the monastery, and at the end of the day it was dark, and we needed to come back, and it would have been a lot longer if we had taken the road, so we wanted to go through the corn fields, and they were, during the day it was easy, but at night it was quite dangerous. There were like hills and some little water drainage system. And then we met a man who asked us where we were going. It was evening, and he was a local farmer, Indian farmer, and he took us through the cornfields that he knew perfectly. And every time there was a dangerous place, he would take a match and he would show us with the light of the match where the danger was. He was extremely kind. We got to the we got to the end, maybe 3 or 4 kilometers. Um, we got we got to the end. We wanted to thank him. We wanted to give him something. He was poor. You could see that. We wanted to give him something, and he smiled, and then he just disappeared. And this reminded me this the beauty of being able to guide someone somewhere where they wouldn't be able to go, and to do that with joy. Personally speaking and sincerely speaking, I don't think that I'm so particular, that I'm so special, that I have something special, but I have a path that is very sure and clear, marvelous masters always guided me perfectly, and I strongly believe in the Dharma, and I have joy to share this. So this is my attitude. Those who like to come, let's walk together. And this taking of refuge that we'll do now is where we are going to formalize this going beyond being a tourist, going beyond an amateur. Here, I really want to I want to integrate the Dharma into every aspect of my life. So beyond wealth and friends and family and material wealth or my name, I take refuge first and foremost in my spiritual path. And to follow this path, I take refuge in the Buddha who shows me the path. I take refuge in the Sangha of the spiritual community, and I take refuge in the Dharma. This is the actual path, and the Sangha, which is the spiritual community, and I take refuge in the Guru, who is the embodiment of Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha. And it takes time to build this relationship of mutual love and transparency and trust. This is what's extremely important. It's said that the more poor the relationship is, the easier it is to walk this path. So now we will do the formal taking of refuge, even if the refuge comes in one's heart. Even if you don't say a word or you do it without the ceremony, it's something that's deeply within. When we trust someone who guides us spiritually, when we trust that person, the refuge is already it's already been taken, and the same for the Dharma and for Sangha. But it's difficult among the four, to take refuge really in the Sangha. It's harder to 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 make peace or with the idealized image we have of a spiritual community and our and the actual people who make up the and the actual fellow Sangha members. But we're not solitary beings, and I invite you to more and more think about what it means to take refuge in the Sangha, because what will allow the teachings of Buddha and the teachings of other masters, what will allow them to stay stay alive, is more than the master himself. It's the spiritual community that actually practices. That was just a quick side note. So now we will formalize the taking of refuge. For those who have asked himself, has this certainty, that's wonderful. explained sometimes when we take refuge, there are two ways of falling in love with the Dharma. Those who have that they fall in love, that love at first sight. There's some that some meet a spiritual guide, and it's just love at first sight. There are those instead who go slowly, and they talks a little bit, and then goes to meet someone else, and then comes back, and little by little, one falls in love little by little. It's more stable, generally speaking, when it's like this, and before one knows it, one's already in love. And in both cases, when one falls in love with the Dharma, it's normal and it's kind of healthy that at some point there to be a crisis. And the crisis is part of the path. And when there is this crisis, that generates an opportunity where we can look back at our choices. Okay, I've gotten married to you. What have I done? All right, let me look at why we're here. I think about it. I look back. I check. And that brings either um, it will either it will either reinforce that relationship, break that relationship, or and the third is not a valid solution. One pretends and just goes on. I mean, this crisis is part of the path. I had mine at the beginning when I started. I had a more idealized view, and then afterwards, then we have a more concrete, less idealized view, and uh, so that the crisis will come. Don't worry. It's where that moment where we look back on our choices and make them more solid. To formalize the taking of refuge, there will be a small ceremonial part, but it's mostly an inner attitude. For those who are here and you're not ready for this moment, maybe you don't have total certainty or you haven't completely understood what it is, do not feel obligated. Or for many years, the taking of refuge was done when someone would ask me, and then they just became more and more people, and it was difficult to satisfy all the requests. So I decided that once a month, a few times a year, we offer the refuge practice, and then those who've already taken, they can also renew. But don't feel at all obligated. It's something very, very deep. And once we do it, we should do it seriously. A deep commitment, a real commitment, where we take the commitment to follow these teachings, follow this system, this tradition in this case, within Buddhism, within the Gelugpa tradition, the lineage of Lama Ganshin Rinpoche, the so-called Nalso tradition lineage. And we follow it with love and determination as best as I can. And this doesn't exclude other teachings, other possibilities. And I repeat, there are certain traditions that when one goes there, they say, okay, you need to not follow anything else. For example, someone's already come. Oh, Lama, I've taken refuge with you. Can I go to this other master? For me, it's okay. You need to ask the other one if it's okay that you go. Or sometimes people will go to Lama Ganshin and would ask, "Oh, Rinpoche, what do you say? Can I go to that master in that place?" I said, "Go, and what's beneficial, take. What's not beneficial, just leave it." And this is what I offer to everyone. Sometimes joking a little bit, but I feel it's a Tibetan proverb that says, he or she who has one eye, the one-eyed man or woman is the king in the land of the blind. So I don't think I am the one who has the best handle of Buddhist teachings, or um, but I but we're not here to create any kind of hierarchy, but let's walk together. Let's trust each other with an attitude of love and respect, and something that's extremely important and which is developed in time, over time. This aspect that in front of our spiritual guide, it's important to develop an attitude where gradually we're just not afraid of being ourself with our light and also with our shadows. We don't need to hide a part of ourselves or pretend that there's not there's a part that's not that's there. We're transparent, sincere, true, naked, without the fear of being judged or without the fear of not being loved. This is also very important, and we're not that used to this, but it's extremely important. Someone once asked me, and someone once said, Lama, if I came to you and said that I've killed someone, what would you say? I, I, I would keep guiding you and loving you in the same way. Um, doesn't change anything. Today, even before, 2 or 3 people made a similar comment. They didn't feel ready for the refuge practice because they didn't feel worthy enough. If we need to be worthy of taking refuge, we'll never do it. And it's like somebody says, "No, you Buddhists, you're Buddhist, you shouldn't get angry." And I answer, I get angry because I'm Buddhist, because if I were a Buddha, I wouldn't need to be Buddhist. In other words, I'm along the path, and that's why I trust Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha. I want to become a Buddha. I'm not a Buddha yet. And when we take refuge, it's important to get to free ourselves from this expectation of already being what we want to be. So we accept what we are, where we are, and we put ourselves in the game with everything we have. So now let's do the formalization of the taking of refuge. For those who do it for the first time, or those who've done it in the past and like to renew, I invite you to stand, make 3 prostrations, and then sit down with your right knee on the ground. If it's difficult to sit with your right knee on the ground, or if you have problems on your knee, you can sit on a chair, no problem at all. It's the position with your right knee on the ground is the position of request, or you can also sit on your back heel and the left knee is raised. This is the position that for centuries has been used for making a request. So let's visualize above me. There are my masters, my spiritual masters, starting with Lama Ganchen Rinpoche. In this life, I've had about 25 masters, but mostly Lama Ganchen Rinpoche. So he's there with all my other masters, and above him, there's Kyabchen Chishan Dorje Chang, and above him is Paponka Rinpoche, all the way up to Lama Tsongkhapa, and then to Atisha, from Atisha all the way to Nagarjuna, and then gradually to Buddha Shakyamuni. From the heart of each one, there's a flow of light that comes down, heart to heart, all the way to my heart. Let's observe ourselves for a moment. And each one observe within that as long as we're taken by our mental defilements, attachment, ignorance, selfishness, anger, as long as we're taken by our actions and the karmic force and their results, there will be suffering. We desire deeply to get out of the cycle of suffering, to get out of the cycle of samsara. We desire profoundly to reach a deep state of peace and joy and balance, the so-called nirvana. And we don't want to do it only for ourselves. When we look around, we see every being. We desire the happiness of every being in the same way desire our own, and we want every being to be free from suffering in the same way that we don't want to suffer. And we take the deep commitment to develop our own qualities and get rid of our mental defilements. And to do this, we need to transform our being, our body, speech, and mind, and we need help for that. We take refuge in the Buddha who shows us the path, who guides us, who transmits, who accompanies us. We take refuge in the Dharma, the actual path, teachings, practice, the inner process of transformation. And we take refuge in the Sangha, the spiritual company that supports us along this path. And we take refuge, first and foremost, in the Guru, who is the embodiment of the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha. From the depth of our hearts, we ask for help, support, and we're face to face with our own Guru, inseparable from every Buddha, every holy being. And without hiding, we take away our masks, without the fear of being who we are, and with the deep, deep, sincere wish to become a Buddha for the benefit of all beings. We ask for help to follow this path that we deeply want to walk, to follow. With this intention, repeat after me. As you repeat, we generate this deep request, and we visualize this flow of light that comes from the heart of Buddha Shakyamuni, going to the heart of each lineage master, all the way to Lama Ganchen Rinpoche, then to mind. And as we repeat the taking of refuge, it comes to our heart. Then I will ask you a question, and you will answer the question. I'll say, this is the path. You say, excellent. This is the method, excellent. And then I will snap my fingers, and the refuge is formally taken. So we imagine this flow of light, and from my heart to your heart, that represents the transmission of refuge. And as we make this sincere and deep request, since we want to follow this path, we ask for help. Repeat.
Sharanam gacchami. Dharmam sharanam gacchami. Sangam Sharanam Gacchami. Dutiyam Buddham Sharanam Gacchami. Dutiyam Dharmam Sharanam Gacchami. Dutiyam Sangam Sharanam Gacchami. Tirtiyam Buddham Sharanam Gacchami. Tirtiyam Dharmam Sharanam Gacchami. Tirtiyam Sangam Sharanam Gacchami. Namo Gurubhye, Namo Buddhaya, Namo Dharmaya, Namo Sangaya. 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 Namo Triratnaya. Sangye Chodam. Tsogi Choknamla. Janchu Pardo. Dani Kyapsuchi. Dagi Jinsok. Gibe Sonamki. Drola Pencher. Sangye Drubrasho. Nel Buddha, nel Dharma e nel Sangha.
In the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha, I take refuge until enlightenment. With the practice of generosity, morality, patience, enthusiastic effort, concentration, and wisdom, may I obtain Buddhahood for the benefit of all sentient beings. In the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha, I take refuge until enlightenment. With the practice of generosity, morality, patience, enthusiastic effort, concentration, and wisdom, may I obtain Buddhahood for the benefit of all sentient beings. In the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha, I take refuge until enlightenment. With the practice of generosity, morality, patience, enthusiastic effort, and concentration, and wisdom, may I obtain Buddhahood for the benefit of all sentient beings.
Mahamuni, Shakyamuni, Swaha. Om Muni Muni, Mahamuni, Shakyamuni, Swaha. Om Muni Muni, Mahamuni, Shakyamuni, Swaha.
Now I ask you the question, Tabmino, and you answer Lexo, which means Tabmino means this is the path, this is the method, and you answer Lexo, which means excellent, and then I'll snap my fingers and the refuge has been formally taken. Tabmino, you answer Lexo. You can sit normally now. Let's recite and do the meditation of refuge together. So our lineage masters are above me, and little by little one absorbs into the next until they absorb into Lama Rinpoche, and then into me, and then from my 5 chakras, light rays emanate and absorb into your 5 chakras respectively.
Namo Buddhaya, Namo Dharmaya, Namo Sangaya, Namo Gurubhye Daya, Namo Dharmaya, Namo Sangaya, Namo Gurubhye Namo Buddhaya, Namo Dharmaya, Namo Sangaya, Namo Triratnaya. Sangye chedan tsoki chonamla chanchu partu dani kyapsuchi dagi jinso gipe sonam kim Drola pincher sangye drupar sho sangye chedang soki chonamla chancho parto dani kyapso chi dagi jinso Sonam ki drola penchir sangye drupar sho sangye chodan tsoki chonamla jancho parto dani kyapso chi dagi jinso gipe sonam ki drola penchir sangye drupar sho.
In the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha, I take refuge until enlightenment. With the practice of generosity and the other perfections, may I obtain Buddhahood for the benefit of all sentient beings.
Mahamuni Shakyamunye Swaha Om Muni Muni Mahamuni Shakyamunye Swaha Om Muni Muni Mahamuni Shakyamunye Swaha. Dal mio cuore
From my heart,
viene un'emanazione
an emanation
che viene al capo di ognuno
comes to the crown of each one of your heads becomes as small as a thumb and enters in your through your central channel and sits at your heart on top of an 8-petaled lotus flower, becoming inseparable from you. Guru Buddha sits at your heart, and we experience a deep feeling of inner space, inner joy. We become inseparable and of the same nature of Guru Buddha, and we allow ourselves to go beyond our ordinary identity, and we melt into Buddha. We experience this deep state of joy and peace and harmony.
Dagi chiwara pede tenshola kadrin chimbe gone jesonte kusun tugi ngodru tsedu sol panden tsawe lama rimboche dagi drimbra pede tenshola kadrin chimbe gone jesonte chodan tumo ngodru tsedu sol panden tsawe lama rimboche dagi ninkar pede tenshula kadrin chembe gone jesonte janchu nimpe pardo tempare shu tseraba kundu gyawa tsongka pe tekcho shenye ngodru zebe gyawe ngakpe lamsam tenye la keche tsamyan dokpar margyur che pakyu ke kudan dagi lu pakyu ke sungdan dagi nga pakyu ke tukdan dagi yi ten yerme chiktu chingi lo makyu ke kudan dagi lo makyu ke sungdan dagi nga makyu ke tukdan dagi yi ten yerme chiktu chingi lo.
Guru Buddha stays at our heart, inseparable from us, who accompanies us, every choice we make, every thought that we have, every word that we say during our life, during our death, during our bardo, and in all future lives.
Nime kuyan delekshin Ninsen takto delekpe kuncho sumki chingilo kuncho sumki ngodrubotsol sumki trashisho Al-alba
At dawn or at dusk, at night or midday, may the three jewels grant us their blessings. May they help us to achieve all realizations and sprinkle the path of our lives with various signs of auspiciousness. In this way, we conclude the taking of refuge. I thank you deeply for being here together, not just today, but along this path from life to life together. Our job in this particular moment historically is it's not, in my opinion, to spread Buddhism, but to be part of the solution and no longer part of the problem. Now, for those who've taken refuge for the first time, normally the kata is offered to thank as well. And those who've taken refuge for the first time, you'll be given a name, like being reborn within a spiritual family, and you'll be given a name. If you already have a name within a Buddhist tradition, you you don't need another name. You're still within the family of Buddha. Some insist that they want a new name, but you don't need another name. And the name is based on intuition and has to do with qualities to develop. But all the names are all qualities that we should all develop. Um, there's one aspect in particular. I remember once someone came to me and said that he didn't like his name, her name, his name. And in this case, Lama Genshin Rinpoche had given the name that he didn't like and asked me to give a new name without telling me what it was. And I gave a name and it was the same. And at that person, whether you like it or not, that's the way it is. Anyway, this name, you can use it in your everyday life or not. It's something, something that you can keep inside. It depends on you. But what's important is feeling that you're part of a spiritual family, that you have this spiritual company for this path together. This is it for today. Lama Genshin would often say, see you sometimes, see you every moment. We see you sometimes, we see you in every moment. And then tomorrow morning at 8:30, there will be teachings. So you can take a kata. They're in the back of the room. Okay, that's it. Thank you, everyone.